Fellow Kenyans, we are once again witnessing a situation in which the country is having problems with the new Uhuru regime. The country is having the problem of increment in the prices of oil. The petroleum prices are set to increase regardless of the fact that Kenyans are fundamentally living in poverty. Now, while a lot of critics have voiced their concerns about this development, what is the cause of all this increment in oil prices? The increment in oil prices shows that the government is very much in crisis, and after plunging the country into a debt of over 6 trillion Kenyan shillings, the government is now unable to fund its basic daily activities. And in order to raise funds, one of the best strategies of the government available is to tax the poor, because oil is consumed by majority of Kenyans. First and foremost, we have to remember that the oil industry is one of the most lucrative industries in Kenya. And when we look at price increases under the system of capitalism, usually price increases, be it oil, be it sugar, be it unga prices, it is normally as a result of a conspiracy between the capitalist ruling class and the cartels that are controlling these trades. Now, on the question of oil, if you look at the industry, who owns the industry? Who owns the oil industry in Kenya? This is where to start the analysis. Now, the biggest oil producer in Kenya, or the biggest oil distributor in Kenya, is the Vivo oil. That is fundamentally connected to Shell, and that has 28% of the market. And Shell is a foreign company. It's a British company linked to South Africa, linked to Kenya, and several other African countries like Nigeria. Now, the second biggest oil distributor in Kenya is Total Kenya Limited. And Total is not owned by Kenyans. Total is an Italian company that has vast interests of oil in Kenya, and it controls 23% of the market. The third company is Kenobil, and Kenobil owns 13.9% of the local market. Of course, Kenobil is being, fronted as a Pan-African based company, but the bottom line is that it is not owned by Kenyans, so it is by, essence owned by foreigners. It is a foreign-owned entity. Now, we are looking at the 10 biggest oil companies in Kenya, because there are a total of 45 oil companies operating in the country, and majority of them are foreign-owned. Now, look at the National Oil Corporation. That is actually the government entity in charge of oil, and that is supposed to be controlling the prices of oil through the government. It owns 7.4% of the market. Next is the Libyan oil that owns 7.2% of the market. Libyan owned, the name speaks for itself. Then we have the Hashi Group, which imports oil. Hashi Group is also foreign owned. Next is the Adax Petroleum. Adax Petroleum is actually a Chinese company that is also involved in oil exploration and distribution in Kenya. The eighth is the Kua Energy, that is also foreign owned. Then there is the Colt Petroleum, that is Kenyan owned but also on private hands. Then the 10th oil company is the Hass Petroleum, Kenyan owned but private. So what is the point? The point is that out of the 45 oil companies operating in Kenya, and out of the 10 biggest companies, oil companies operating in Kenya, majority of them are foreign owned. And what happens when foreigners are owning the distribution of oil across the country? The consequence is that the pricing of oil is on the hands of private individuals, and the government that is supposed to control oil prices is unable to do so because it is collaborating with these cartels. Now, this is under the privatization program of the oil industry. The oil industry has been privatized, and that is why Kenyans are facing this problem. The implications of privatizing the oil industry is that the government loses control, the real control of pricing, because the government is not involved in the importation of oil in its entirety. And in cases where the government is involved in the importation of oil, the foreign oil companies have a tendency of twisting the government to get their way. So generally, who benefits from the increased oil prices? Obviously, the government will have its cut because of the increased taxation, but majority, the vast aspect of the profits, the oil profits, is going on foreign companies, and these profits are being repatriated outside the country. Because when you look at the oil pricing itself, even assuming that, you know, the oil companies are in charge, now why should oil prices in Kenya be the highest in the region? Because in Mogadishu, a liter of oil is going at 75 Kenyan shillings. In Ethiopia, it is going for 70 Kenya shillings. In Uganda, it's going for 99 Kenya shillings. In Tanzania, it is going for 101 Kenyan shillings. And in Kenya, we are now being told to pay 130 Kenyan shillings. Surely, this is unrealistic. The increment of oil prices at the current rate means that the oil prices are going to increase from 100 Kenyan shillings to 300 Kenyan shillings on a regular commuter route. That is, if you have been paying 100 on your transport, you are now going to pay 300 Kenyan shillings. I mean, this is a colossal amount of money, and the government should not be allowed to walk away with this. Those who are affected as are the poor Kenyan, the poor mwananchi, who feels the pinch. The rich owners of capital, the ruling class, members of the capitalist ruling class, members of the upper middle class, members of the middle class are not feeling the pinch. Those who are feeling the pinch are the wrecked Kenyans, the students who have to ply the routes up and down, going about their daily errands. The ordinary workers are the ones paying the price for this, who cannot even afford, to get a ride now in the matatus. Now, what is the solution? Because people have been saying that there should be a reduction of oil prices. From the point of view of the Kenya Red Alliance, there is no solution to the current oil crisis unless the government nationalizes the oil industry. What does this mean? What it means is that the government should take over the importation and the distribution of oil, even given the regional prices, by companies that are not fundamentally state-owned. at least the state has some intervention in the oil prices in other countries. What is happening in Kenya? Now, apart from that, if the government cannot nationalize the oil industry, then Kenyans should continue to see or to witness an increase, a systematic increase in oil prices as long as the government allows it. If individuals can come to Kenya and set up companies, start importing oil, and then start manipulating the oil prices using the regime as conduits to, fleece Kenyans, why can't the government intervene? Why can't the government get involved? Why can't the government take over these industries? Why can't the government take over the distribution of oil? Why can't the government take over the importation of oil at the acceptable and prevailing international prices, so that from those prices, the prices of oil can be determined? The situation is not going to change. Rise up, understand this problem from the point of view of the system of government, not from the point of view of some CS called Rotich, who has come to increase oil. Rotich has been following orders. He cannot just wake up in the morning and say that we are increasing the prices of oil. Rotich is not alone. The cabinet secretary is an employee of the government. He is an appointee of the president. And so, when he comes up and increases oil prices, he is not solely responsible. The people behind him are responsible. And who are these people? Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta is squarely responsible. And the oil prices has been increased in cahoots with the oil cartels that control the oil industry. The 45 foreign and local companies that control the oil industry are the same people colluding with members of the capitalist ruling class to increase prices of oil. So let us not focus too much on Rotich. Let us not focus too much on the cabinet secretary. Let us focus on the root cause of the problem. And the root cause of the problem is the government sitting on a system that allows it to do anything without intervention by the representatives of the people, the so-called representatives. It does so without the possibility of direct intervention of the people, because the opposition is dead. So there is need for political reorganization. Thank you very much.